Hello, beautiful people. Today I am so excited because we're going to have a Thriver TV chat with the amazing Case Kenny. And I know a lot of you have probably heard about Case, but I'm going to share with you what Case has been up to because it's wonderful. So Case Kenny, he is an entrepreneur, a mindfulness expert, host and founder of the top 25 Apple podcast, New Mindset, Who Dis. He's been featured on Good Morning Australia, and you might recognize him from his viral, and it's going viral, his coffee cup and post-it quotes on Instagram, which is so cool and such a great idea. They're now being shared by millions. And what's really great is that Case's concepts are empowering people to be happier and live more fulfilling lives, which we love here in the Thriver community, by changing their mindsets in all areas of life, spanning from self-worth and empowerment to dating and relationships, big topic over here, career advice, and more. He's created the best-selling mindfulness journals, the New Mindset Journal, Unbothered, and Single is Your Superpower. Love that. So, Case, you've been pretty busy. You've been doing a lot of stuff. And I love it because in our community, a lot of people are kind of finding their zen and their healing and their mindfulness later in life as a result of narcissistic abuse. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that because there's definitely some of your post-it notes that I'm going, I think this guy knows about this, or there's something going on there, but we'll get to that. But first of all, I want to ask you, Case, about how did this incredible journey start? What happened?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on. It's a very kind introduction. Yeah, I always joke that when I was rolled off the human assembly line, that they checked the box for optimist when they created me. And I've always just been a very optimistic person in life. Like if there is a silver lining to be found, I will find it. If there is a positive angle to create, I will create it. That's always been my worldview.
Nice.
And that's just always how I've lived my life. I started the podcast at the end of 2018 in response to a couple of things. It was in response to a breakup, a serious relationship that ended. It was also in response to being very enveloped and consumed by my career at the time. At the time, I worked in sales in Chicago. And at that time, I was just like, who is Case? Like, I was kind of frustrated. I'm like, I don't feel like I'm living my life. I don't feel like I'm doing what I should be doing, or I feel like I'm just following someone else's blueprint. So I was like, I want to do something, challenge myself. So I was like, yeah, start a podcast. So I started the podcast as a means to challenge myself to speak to topics that I wanted to address, speaking out loud to the things that I was struggling with, or speaking to the things that I had learned as a way of cementing them in my life. And I started to do the podcast through the lens of mindfulness, just through the lens of self awareness, through the lens of honesty with myself. And I just kind of kept pulling on that thread. And the rest is basically history. But it was that starting point, the podcast, and then all kinds of crazy things have happened where, I was like, I want to bring this to life in more ways. Started writing quotes on Instagram. I wrote a couple books, started doing all these things, but basically as a way to bring mindfulness, my variety of mindfulness, which is very relatable and short and easy and observational, to bring that to life in different ways. And it's been so incredibly rewarding, and it's helped other people, but it's also helped me. Like, I joke that my podcast is my therapy. Like, I go to therapy, but it's also my form of therapy. And the fact that it helps other people is incredible. So it very much is a privilege to be able to do all of this.
Yeah, there's so many things in there I love, and I completely and utterly agree with you that we teach the stuff that we most need to learn. Case, one of the statements when I was going through your stuff, and I'm like, this guy's on it. Wow, like he really is. One of the statements that you said, starting over is being okay with losing someone so you don't lose yourself. And I just went bingo. And this is, one of the reasons why I was so excited about sharing you with my community, because this is everything that we teach in narcissistic abuse recovery, is to let go of a false self and come home to being a true source and a true self within yourself. And I'm kind of interested about that. Have you ever experienced somebody with narcissistic personality disorder? Or maybe you're not sure, or I don't know. I'm just kind of interested to hear about that.
So I would say in my life, I would say I've dodged that. Thankfully, privileged to have dodged that.
Okay.
Um, uh, I think a lot of my ability to help others is through empathy and observation, and I spend a lot of time talking to people. And one of my favorite topics is about starting over. I think it's such a powerful thing that when we embrace it, it
Yes.
really sets us free. And in the face of narcissistic trauma or mistreatment or conditioning, I think it's the
Yes.
ultimate thing, because my whole thing about starting over is we assume that starting over means we're starting from zero, means we messed up so much that we have to start over completely. And my whole thing about starting over is that starting over isn't about what you're leaving behind in yourself, it's about what you're bringing with you in yourself. In the case of a narcissistic partner, you're definitely leaving them behind, but you have to consider what you're bringing with you. It's You're bringing with you the lesson, the respect, the new standard, the leveling up, whatever it is. And I think the more we focus on that, to your point about coming home. Yeah, you're coming home to yourself. That's a self that's now empowered by a higher standard. When that's your mentality about starting over
Yes.
rather than, "Oh, man, I gotta start over from 0 again, I messed up." It's like, it changes the game. I love starting over. I think it's the most amazing gift we have in life. Time, plus the ability to embrace time and start over. So, I know you didn't ask me that, but I love the topic of starting over.
And I love that because you are such an honorary thriver, because this is exactly, what we do in our community is help people overcome that whole victim mindset to take the gift and the up level and the graduation. So I know, Casey, you would have heard from a lot of people about, just tell us, some of the experiences where you've been able to help people going forward into healthier relationships, or being able to start their own businesses, or inspire them to get onto their missions. I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I live in a weird world. Like, it is such a privilege to have my thoughts and words and voice inspire other people to make life changes. I mean, I've probably gotten
Yes.
hundreds of messages over the years of people who you know ended a relationship because they realized they were chasing something. I talk to people all the time who quit their jobs to chase their passion. I myself quit my job. I worked in a sales job for 8 years, and I quit that to do this. And I think that's inspired some other people. I think ultimately, like, the biggest thing that, like,
And
I'm
can I
I'm super
just
proud.
on that
Yeah.
point, that's such a gutsy choice. And I know a lot of people hold out and they don't make that choice because they choose the security rather than the passion of their heart. What gave you the courage to do that, or what happened there?
Yeah. Well, I'll share what I think is a crazy story, or just a weird story. But also, like, I've always had this creative side. Like, I joke that I do arts and crafts for a living, because I kind of do. Like, if you could see what's behind the camera, I've got a bunch of paper and scissors, and I've got a paper chopper on.
Oh my
It's just like a weird world. I'm literally holding a Sharpie and Post-it notes as we're talking, because I'm just, like, so drawn to these things. Um, and I've always been creative, always been a pretty voracious reader and writer, and I just never wanted to let that die. And working in the job I had, like, I was very successful. Like, it was a very successful and lucrative job, and I did it for a long time.
God.
I learned a lot, but I always just had that nagging feeling that I was leaving something behind. And I the
Mm.
being 34 now, I'd say when I was like 29, I kind of changed my north star for what I want in life. Previously, it was like, I just want to be happy. And happy is such a malleable target that we can convince ourselves we're happy when we're really not, all these different things. I changed it to, I just want to be proud of myself. And being intrinsically tied to how creative I'm wired to be, I was like, I'm not fully proud of myself because I'm not embracing that creative side. I'm, like, leaving that behind.
Yeah.
And I remember, this is wild, and I'm gonna butcher the story because I've never even told this story. Like, back at the end of last year, I remember I woke up one morning. I woke up, like, right before my alarm went off, and I this is wild. I'm telling this. I woke up and I was like crying. I was like crying from the dream. And I remember the end of the dream. I don't remember the context of the dream, but I was having a conversation with someone and I was like weeping in the story because, and the wording that I had said, it was like, I'm afraid that I'm leaving too much on the table, is what I had said in that dream. And I woke up and I was like, that's a sign. Like, I've got to go and do this. I've got to do it more. And at the time, like, I was working at this job and also doing this business, but like, at a certain point, I was like, I've gotta, all the cliches. I got to take a jump. I've got to give this a shot. I'll regret this if I don't. And ultimately, I was like, I'm going to do it, and it's been really rewarding and really different, and just a total mentality shift. But I'm proud of myself for doing that. I think now at this point, I'm not leaving anything on the table, and it feels good.
Beautiful. Well, you're living your dharma. You listen to your soul purpose,
I'm, yeah.
and I believe, I really believe everybody has got some soul purpose within them, and we have so many people in our community who have a soul purpose, and we're very blessed too. In our community, a lot of people have really tapped into that after narcissistic abuse, and it's so beautiful to watch because, yeah, well, it's that old cliche, isn't it? If you don't love what you do, it's not a living, it's a dying. It's
Mm.
it's just so it's great that you modeled that. So, Case, I'd love to hear from you how what you can share with my audience.
Yeah, for sure. The first thing I would say is like serious topics, like like serious relationship trauma and things like that. Like I'm a guy giving my observations in life, sharing my love for mindfulness. There are qualified people out there who can help tackle those and unpack those in serious ways. So I would say that as a asterisk on my advice there. Um,
For
but
sure. Exactly.
um, so I would say a couple things. I would say one, it's like we're very quick in life as humans to create assumptions from the things we observe, right? We're wired that way. I see this, therefore I believe that. But we're very quick to go to one end of the spectrum, namely the negative end of the spectrum, in the form of we see a pattern, we see a cycle, and we assume that that is permanent. And I get that, of course, that's how logic presents itself. But I'm really big on embracing a couple things, namely one, that a pattern is only a pattern until it's not a pattern anymore. And a lot of times with like the most rewarding things in life, there are patterns, negative patterns that precede the outcome that you want. In the interim, in the meanwhile stage, it's so important to be able to delineate between a fact and a feeling. And I do a lot of exercises and like mindfulness seminars and journaling seminars on helping people delineate between a fact that is something that they refuse to negotiate on. That is a higher truth about themselves that is so defining that they would never throw that aside no matter how much they're hurt, how much they doubt themselves, whatever it may be, between a fact and a feeling, which a feeling by definition is temporal. It's defined by a certain shortness of length and time. And I think there's so much power. In fact, I think that is how we, by definition, take back our power. It's delineating between a fact and a feeling. But it's very confusing for us because in the moments where we're like, I feel anxious, I feel unlovable, I feel unworthy, right? These negative conclusions we come to as a result of maybe trauma, we confuse honesty with fact. In a moment where we say, I feel unlovable, sometimes if we don't check ourselves, we say, well, I'm honest with myself. I feel unlovable. I've felt this way for a while, therefore I am unlovable. We complete that circle for ourselves. But the
So
reality is
true.
there's a big difference between being honest and the truth. Being honest is saying this is how I
So
feel, but
true.
the truth is coming back to maybe even a list. I encourage people to write down a list of like three big truths in life. Coming back to that list, and maybe one of the things on your list is I am worthy of, the same love and energy I give, for instance. I am worthy of that because I give it myself. I am worthy of reciprocity. If that is your truth and your feeling is not aligned with that, compare the two. And then maybe, through self control and routine and practice, you could realize that one is temporary, one is what you believe. Come home to the one you believe. Things like that, I like really, really believe in. And the reason I'm so bought into that is because I am passionate about journaling and the power of hearing and seeing and thinking a thought and writing it down and cementing it with things that you believe, facts that you believe, truths that you believe, and then using that as a contrast point for the feelings you feel. We all feel things. They should all be evaluated. Mindfulness is the art of examining those things, but it's also the art of comparing that feeling to your truth. So if you don't have those truths, that's fine. But to the whole conversation, anytime is a good time to start over. Anytime is a good time to redefine or define those truths. So I encourage people to sit down and like
Yeah.
write what those truths are. I believe that my hard work will be paid off. I believe that intention and honesty deserves to be returned, whatever it may be. So I'm just big on that because I think the gray area of life where we can really fall into those negative cycles, those self-deprecating cycles, is when we fail to realize the difference between feelings and facts. And the reality of life is, unfortunately, I wish every human loved each other and treated each other with respect, is we're going to come across experiences that make us feel those negative things. But we take back our power when we realize the difference between those feelings and the facts that we believe in. So that's my take on that.
Yeah, no, I love that. I really, really love that. And what we find with people who are highly, highly traumatized is definitely that belief systems get very, very uh, compromised by heavy emotional trauma. And they can often be in repeat, and they do become the same kind of mesh pit, the same
Mm,
issue. And what we find is very, very highly effective is the self partnering and being able to, with quantum tools, actually pick up the dense energy of the trauma and release it, which then creates a space and an opening of peace and calm to be able to accept a true source belief. And it's kind of like a shift out of who I was into who at a superconscious level I can be. And it really helps that move from the false, the lie that has grabbed hold, to the truth.
yep.
So it's exactly what you're saying.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that, and
Mm.
we're talking about the same things through different perspectives and different applications and
Correct.
different learnings, and I love that. Like, and
Yeah.
what I take from that is like a lot of what you just described is self forgiveness as well. I think the key to breaking a cycle a lot of the time is forgiveness, and I talk a lot about forgiveness and creating closure and giving yourself clarity by forgiving yourself, and I talk a lot about how I think that, the reason a lot of the time we're hesitant to forgive ourselves is that we're hesitant to trust ourselves again. And I think when you
Exactly.
empower yourself to say no, like I want to trust myself. I want to trust that my intention is well served. That
Yes.
all those facts that we just came to. It's like using that to look back and forgive yourself for something you're blaming yourself for. That is what sets you free. Trusting yourself is forgiving yourself and all these things. And, exactly what you're saying, unweighting yourself of these things. So I love that.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying about the whole forgiveness aspect and trusting yourself. That connection is so powerful because when you don't trust yourself, it's like you're trying to hold up the memory of where you screwed up and where you did it so badly as a defense that it's not going to happen to me again. But it's
Yep.
actually the complete opposite. You're more likely to slide off the road and smash into the tree that you are terrified about hitting, because that's where your attention is and where your energy is going. But what we really
Mm.
discover here with quantum forgiveness is by actually releasing the trauma of what somebody did to you and midwifing in the superconscious truth. The up level becomes quantum forgiveness is kind of like quantum forgiveness is there was actually nothing to forgive. This was a soul journey I went on to up level my values, my truths, my connection with my superconscious. And without the experience that I had, I would never have been brought to this up level. So it's not like you're going to
Wow.
bring the person around and have cheese and biscuits with them, but it's like, well, you came as a catalyst into my life to reflect back the unconscious parts of me that I needed to self partner with and graduate and up level. So if you
I
hadn't
love
come,
that.
somebody else would have. That's that's what we do with quantum forgiveness. But it's exactly what you're saying, just at a quantum big picture level.
Yeah, I love that. I love that too. I just wrote that down that there's nothing to forgive because, it's a matter of
Yeah.
embracing what that experience gave you to give you some element of completion, elevation, evolution, or whatever it is. So like I love that. I love that as a little soundbite. I'm gonna marinate on that. That's powerful.
Yeah, have it chuck that out there as a Post-it note. I'd be honored.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Yeah, yeah. No, Case, it's just great working with you. And not everybody is up for, I would have thought, the work I do, I would have thought it was woohoo years ago. And it is deeply spiritual, energetic, quantum healing based, but very logical too. But we've got to come at this, some people are like, hang on, that's not for me. This is more for me. And it's great to be doing the same thing in a different way, but really we're doing the same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny you say that because my story is like in my 20s, I would have clowned on myself and you and self-development and spiritual transformation. I would have been like, "Oh, okay, that's not for me. That's for someone else." Like I don't want to have to wear all kinds of weird robes and get crystals and go to the
Mm.
Himalayas and do these things.
Yeah,
Like that honestly would have been my like hyperbolic opinion of those things, but like
right.
I'm so passionate about the space because like I love your energetic approach and mine is different. Mine is like I call it logical observational mindfulness in that I can see this in my life, therefore I can use that as a starting point to believe this, right? Which is different from I can't see anything, I'm just going to believe it. That's always been tough for me, but I should have been a lawyer or something like that because I'm like evidence A means outcome B, Your Honor. Here's the
Yeah.
evidence. And the thing about life is we all have experiences and observations and things that we've lived that if we uncover them in the right context, we could turn to them as proof of worth, value, standards, boundaries, whatever it may be. But we're quick to forget that. So, like, a lot of my job, I think, is unearthing memories, experiences, observations, and recontextualizing them so that we could take value from them to forgive, heal, new standard, or whatever it may be. So, I love that. I like we're doing the same thing through different energies and pathways and just ways of coming at these subjects. So,
Absolutely. And what you're doing is actually quantum anyway, because it's the unseen world that you're dealing with, these people's states, emotions, and mindsets. Because it's not like somebody can go to a doctor and get an x ray and go, well, you've got a 6 pound grief bucket in there that's keeping you stuck in your life.
yeah, yeah. If
So
only it was that easy.
you're operating in the unseen world, which, to me, and the truth sets you free. Doesn't matter how it's said, a thousand different ways, the truth sets you free. So, Case, it's been so awesome having you on. I'd love to, dig into some other stuff with you again at some time. And it's a joy to introduce you to my audience. So thank you for coming on with me. And I just, yeah, like, do you have any final words that you would like to say to anybody who's feeling disempowered right now?
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you for having me on. And this is great. I love connecting. We're halfway around the world, so that's cool as well. Um, yeah, I mean, I would
Very.
say like the thing that's really empowered me that is just like a powerful force of hope in my life, especially when I'm feeling stuck or especially if I feel like I'm chasing something is it's a soundbite I always give. And it's a pretty simple soundbite at face value, but it's really kind of changed my life is there's no right way to live your life, but there is a wrong way, and the wrong way is to think that there's a right way. And I say that because I think so much of like the negative energy and lack of healing and forgiveness in life comes from comparing our journey to
Yeah.
other people. It comes from seeing other
So
people's
true.
journey as the blueprint that we need to chase. That if I'm single, I need to be like that person. And if I'm not, I'm a wrong single person. I need to emulate their definition of happiness, success, relationship, whatever it may be. And I think it's great to be inspired by other people's examples. It's fantastic to have, examples of what a healthy relationship looks like and so on. But we need to realize that what a gift it is to establish what our truth is, what our truth is. Not what we think our
Oh,
truth
yeah.
needs to be to look good on the outside, not what we think our
Yes.
journey needs to look like in order to be validated. It's like there is such a power in coming back and discovering what is true to you. And that is the right way to live your life. And when that's your that's your take, I don't think there's ever a wrong way. Like, you might take a wrong turn, you might do whatever, but to our whole conversation, you could always come back to that because your mentality is that of discovering what is right for you based on who you are, your
So
needs,
true.
your perspective. And I just love that. Like, I, it's like, even just like from career wise, like I make a living from sharing my feelings on the internet. If I would have told you that 10 years ago, I would have laughed. That's not possible. That is the wrong way, but it's definitely
Exactly.
not. So it's like I just it's been so empowering both personal wise as a man and also career wise and relationship wise. Like I used to think that to be a single guy in Chicago meant I had to do all these things. And once I embraced it, that's not true. I just feel at peace and like the just like a good person and like doing living my truth. And it just feels great. And I think people once embraced will also feel that. So I would offer that as like my final advice.
So, such a joy having you. How can people find you? Where can they find your work?
Yeah. Well, thank you again. It's pretty simple. Like Instagram is usually the hub for all things case. So it's just case.kenny on Instagram. The podcast is called New Mindset Who Dis. New Mindset Who Dis, all one word.com is where you can pick up my journals. And yeah, it's pretty simple.
All right, Case, you take care and thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.